When I was a little girl, my big sister had a golden retriever named Buddy. Golden retrievers are full of energy, and Buddy was no exception. We had loads of fun with him, going on hikes, playing fetch, and even swimming. Oh, and there was a time he saved my little niece from drowning in 4 feet of water, but that's for another horror story. Anyways, sadly, we had to put him down when he was 8 years because of terminal cancer. But I've always kept those happy times with Buddy in my heart. Fast forward 12 years, right after I finished uni, I wanted to do something special to celebrate. So that summer, my boyfriend at the time and I planned a trip to the Greek island of Euboea. But right from the start, things didn't go smoothly. Our flight was delayed by 4 hours, which meant we lost most of our first day. The plane touched down around 2:30 p.m, but we didn't get to our Airbnb in Chalkida until about 5 p.m. The apartment was in a great location, right by the beach and about 5 minutes from their central market. Feeling excited to explore, we decided to head out and explore their central market for some food since we were starting to feel hungry. The local bars and restaurants were lined up along a road parallel to the beach. It looked so nice that we decided to walk along the beach instead, stopping now and then to take photos. This was when I spotted a dog playing in the water about 50 feet away. The dog was by itself, and I wondered why someone would leave their dog like that, especially since it was getting dark. Anyways, being a dog lover, I pointed it out to my boyfriend as we walked closer and told him the dog reminded me of Buddy, mainly because of the white spots on its tail. The moment I brought up Buddy, the dog looked in our way and started running in our direction. Golden retrievers are usually friendly, so I first thought it just wanted to play. But suddenly, out of nowhere, it started growling and barking at us, looking pretty mean. I got so scared that I turned and ran back towards the road. In my rush to get away, I climbed over this small barrier and ended up scraping my shin on the rough concrete. That's the last bit I clearly remember. The next thing I knew, I was hit by a guy on a moped speeding down the road. After that, everything was a blur until a few days later. I was in and out of consciousness when they called for an ambulance and was taken to a nearby private hospital, where tourists go to if they are injured. They did a CAT scan and found I had brain swelling and some head injuries. I needed to see a neurologist, but they were off at the time, so I was transferred to the regular state hospital. More x-rays at the state hospital showed my left arm was badly broken and my right ankle was chipped. My arm was put in a cast all the way up to my armpit, because surgery wasn't an option with my swollen brain. So I had to stay in the hospital for a while. During that time, my brain made up some memories of things that never happened, which I guess is common for people with amnesia. It's like your brain tries to piece together what happened from stories people tell you, but those memories aren't real. I started to really remember stuff again 2 days later, in this weird hospital room surrounded by Greek patients. The nurses spoke very little English except for asking pain, and if I said yes, they'd give me some meds. After hanging in there for 2 weeks, I finally got to leave. My travel insurance sorted out my flights back home and helped me get through the airports. Once I landed at London Heathrow, I went straight to the hospital. The very next day, they did surgery on my arm, putting in metal plates to piece my bones back together. Those plates are still in there, along with some big scars from the surgery. My arm and hand were all stiff and couldn't move right after being in a cast for so long, and I had to have intense physio to be able to move it again. I don't know if I am overthinking the situation or being paranoid for referencing Buddy in this story, but meh. For weeks, I couldn't cut my own food or wash my hair. I also developed PTSD, with flashbacks of dog attacks causing panic attacks. This whole mess threw me off course at a time when I was just starting my adult life. It felt like it defined me for a while because I was stuck, trying to heal from the experience. But time and therapy helped me move past it. Now I hardly think about it, except when I'm trying to win at worst holiday ever stories. But regardless, RIP to Buddy. I will always love him. Now, whether the dog that attacked me for no reason was evil or just my bad luck, I will never know. We've all heard those travel horror stories about how unsafe some cities are. Rio de Janeiro, Brazil is one of those cities. Surrounded by favelas and infamous for its high crime, beachgoers are told to beware of mass lootings and robberies, and taxis run red traffic lights at night as a safety measure. Unfortunately, no amount of warning or safety precautions could have kept me from falling victim to the crimes of Rio. I was with my buddy on a summer trip to Brazil, and one day we were walking on the main road in Ipanema at about 5:30 p.m. This part of Rio is known for being really safe and one of the richest areas of the region. There were lots of people around and everything felt lively. But as we were just enjoying our walk, suddenly everything felt different. A couple of young guys came running down the sidewalk all in a straight line, and they split me up from my friend, who ended up behind me. Initially, I didn't think much of it because they were just teenagers. I just thought they were just being playful. But suddenly, the last guy in the group stopped right in front of me, put a knife to my throat, and started shouting at me in Portuguese. That young teenager, even though he looked really innocent, didn't feel any remorse. I don't understand Portuguese at all, but the sight of the knife was enough for me to know I was in trouble, so I just stood there, not moving. My friend, also visibly shaken, nodded at me as a signal to let go of the bag without confrontation. Then, one of the teenagers grabbed my crossbody bag and yanked it off me, cutting through the strap. After they got my bag, the guy with the knife took off running, and his friend with my bag ran after him. It seems like these guys don't really play American football, because the one with my bag wasn't holding it close to his chest, he just had it in his hands. Seeing this opportunity, I quickly snatched it with all my brute force and started sprinting down the road. Running as fast as I could, my heart was racing while I dashed past many people on the street. Thankfully, those people started yelling at teenagers men I was trying to escape from. It turns out those guys were part of a local gang, known for causing trouble on that street. They harass people, especially women, take their money and then run away. They had already targeted several others on that street earlier that month. Luckily, I had been training for the Ironman race, which is 70.3 miles long, so my running was pretty strong. But even then, I was afraid of getting hurt and ending up bleeding on the beautiful streets of Ipanema. Once I realised no one was following me, I ducked into a convenience store and waited for my friend to catch up before calmly crossing the road and continuing on our way to our hostel. I was really lucky because I got my purse back and got away without getting hurt. It could have been much worse. I checked my purse right away and, thankfully, everything was still inside. I felt super lucky to have gotten my purse back because not everyone is that lucky in these kinds of situations. The lesson is, when you're travelling to another country, make sure to follow all the safety advice you can find and be prepared for emergencies. Plan your trips carefully and always be aware of your surroundings. My partner and I were on an amazing road trip across New Zealand. We had our reliable camper van, and it was the perfect way to see New Zealand, driving around, staying in our van, and checking out all the hidden spots on the South Island. But we made a huge mistake that got us stuck on the side of the road in the middle of nowhere. We ran out of gas. We totally miscalculated the distance to the next fuel station and didn't bring enough gas for our journey. So we ended up stranded on the side of the road with no gas and no way cell service to call for help. Not really knowing what to do next, we figured our best bet was to stay put until morning. It was already getting late, and trying to walk to the nearest place in the dark didn't seem smart. Luckily, our camper van was set up for sleeping, and we had plenty of food and water, and a little wine to lighten the mood, even though we had the essentials for an overnight stay. The isolation and unfamiliarity with the area were unsettling. The idea of trying to sleep when you were cut off from the rest of the world and in such an uncertain situation was daunting. Right when we were bracing ourselves for a night all alone on the roadside, a glimmer of hope appeared. We saw a headlight from a distance. As the lights got closer, we realised it was another camper van coming our way, almost like it popped out of nowhere. My partner didn't waste a moment and flagged it down. To our huge relief, it was a couple of friendly locals from New Zealand. We shared our story of running out of gas, and they couldn't help but laugh with us, gently teasing us about our rookie mistake. Then, at a turn of events we didn't see coming, they revealed they had an extra jerrycan of gas with them and offered to fill up our tank. As they helped us out, they shared stories of how often Google Maps gets it wrong in New Zealand. especially with the estimated drive times in such a vast and varied landscape. This encounter taught us two invaluable lessons: the importance of always ensuring we have enough fuel for long drives and, more importantly, the incredible kindness of Kiwis. Grateful for their help, we gifted them a bottle of wine from our stash as a token of our appreciation. With our spirits lifted and our camper van refueled, we waved goodbye to our new friends and set off once more, eager to continue our adventure across the breathtaking landscapes of New Zealand. Reflecting on that night's experience, it's undeniable that the couple who stopped for us were like guardian angels. In a moment filled with uncertainty and the potential dangers of being stranded in an unfamiliar place, their kindness shone brightly, rescuing us from a potentially dangerous situation. Their willingness to help without expecting anything in return was a powerful reminder of the goodness that exists in this world. My wildest travel story happened during my first trip alone in 2017 to Barcelona. It began as a day full of sightseeing, but quickly turned into a nightmare because of a terrorist. I was staying at a hotel right on La Rambla, a famous 1.2 kilometers long pedestrian street in the heart of Barcelona. That afternoon, a terrorist group attacked by driving a van right down the street, hitting many people, resulting in 13 deaths and injuring at least 130 others. Earlier that morning, I started exploring La Rambla, and then decided to join a last-minute sightseeing tour to see La Sagrada Familia and Park Güell, luckily getting the last available spot. If I hadn't joined that tour, I might have been on La Rambla during the attack. However, our tour was suddenly stopped before we reached the last destination. We were informed there had been an incident, and that we couldn't continue, nor could we return to La Rambla. This was worrying for me. Being alone in a country where I didn't speak the language and now unable to go back to my hotel. Fortunately, a kind family from the tour invited me to stay with them until it was safe to return to our hotels. After the tour ended abruptly, we found ourselves in a confusing and scary situation. The group I was with spent the afternoon looking for a place to eat and stay updated on the news. We ended up in a Chinese restaurant that was still open, offering us food and access to Wi-Fi. It was there we learned about the severity of the attack and that some attackers were still unaccounted for. Trying to get in touch with my family back in Australia was futile due to the time difference. Later, we decided to try our luck in a different part of La Rambla, hoping to find a way back to our hotels. After several hours of waiting near police barricades, the authorities began to escort people back to their hotels if they were considered safe. I was finally escorted back to my hotel around 10 p.m. to find out that both the embassy and my family had been trying to reach me. For the remainder of my stay, I chose to remain mostly inside my hotel, venturing out only for necessities and to visit the memorials that had been set up to honour the victims of the attack. This experience not only left me with a horror story to share, but also instilled in me a deeper sense of caution and preparedness when travelling, especially alone. I now make it a point to share travel safety tips with other solo travellers to help them avoid such terrifying experiences. We've been exploring Europe in a motorhome for years, loving the adventure and the surprises that come with not knowing what's around the next bend. But our first van trip across Europe nearly turned into a nightmare. And I'm not exaggerating. It was a beautiful sunny day in Switzerland and we were driving through the Alps. Our daughter was in the back, singing away, thrilled about acing her exams. We had just made it through a ride on an ancient, shaky funicular that took us backward up a mountain. What else could go wrong, right? Turns out, quite a bit actually. In the Alps, the roads are narrow with lots of twists and turns. Right after we started down the first big curve, we realised our brakes weren't working. Yep. Our brakes chose that moment to quit on us. So, there we were, facing one of the most dangerous situations you can imagine on the road. My husband had to use the emergency brake just to slow us down a bit. The thing about mountain roads is that there's hardly any room to stop or even to turn around safely, and we had just left a parking spot, which meant there wasn't going to be another place to pull over for a good while. Our only option was to keep going down the mountain in our heavy motorhome, which was picking up speed, and my husband was trying his best to control it without regular brakes. Imagine facing sharp 180-degree turns every 200 meters. It was absolutely terrifying. We were on edge, not knowing if the emergency brake would stop working too. If that happened, we'd have no way to stop the motorhome from possibly going off the road. There are no barriers on those mountain roads to keep you safe from the edge. Somehow we made it to the bottom without any accidents. I've never been so terrified in my life. I'm so thankful my husband was the one driving. His calm handling of the situation saved us. Our emergency brake was completely worn out by the time we stopped, but that was the least of our worries. Once we reached the bottom, we found a small town with a mechanic. There, we found out why our brakes had failed. All the brake fluid had leaked out. We had bought the van just 3 months earlier, and we were told it had been fully serviced and passed its MOT test. Clearly something had been missed somewhere, and this almost cost us our lives on those Alps roads. We thought we had checked everything, but we never thought to look at the brake fluid. It turned out it hadn't been changed in years and had turned mostly to water. This meant that as we drove up and down the mountains heating up the brakes, the fluid just evaporated away until there was none left. Luckily, the garage we found was able to refill the brake fluid and replace our worn-out handbrake. This was a huge lesson for us. Always do a thorough check of your vehicle before going on a road trip. And don't just take a salesman's word that everything's fine. It's better to take your vehicle to an independent garage and get a full service done before you head out. This experience showed us the importance of being fully prepared and double-checking everything, especially when you're about to travel in such challenging conditions.